Good morning, and welcome to Moving and Handling Update. First of all, we're going to just talk about our principles, which we've used for many years. So here they are. I hope you can read my writing. It's a little bit tidier than usual. Okay, so the principles of efficient moving. So we're hopefully following the same pattern of movement that all human beings do. Yes, so we call it a natural pattern of movement. Before we do any moving and handling, the first thing is we should do a suitable and sufficient risk assessment. When we've done our suitable and sufficient risk assessment, we then plan and prepare what we need. We don't want to be running away, you know. Do we need to have our gloves on? Do we need a penny? Do we need a slide sheet? Do we actually need to move the chairs away, or Mrs. Jones's luggage that will be stuffed under the bed? So do your planning and preparing before you act. Then we start with a stable base. Okay, and we all remember what our stable base is, folks? Staggered foot position, okay? One foot is like in front of the other, yeah? Okay. And then the next thing is we remember, we relax, whichever word you find is easier, relax, bend, soften, whichever word comes easiest to you, we think about our joints. Good old knees, yes, we need to be working with bent knees. We have to think about our hips, so everybody make sure that they've got very good hula hoop movement, okay? And then we don't forget the shoulders and the neck, yes? We don't want Mrs. Hunch Up or Mr. Hunch Up. We want to be able to relax our shoulders down. Okay. Now comes the difficult one. We have to, in moving and handling, we have to take hold and we have to get close. It is not possible to do moving and handling at a distance. We have to get in close, but only for the shortest time needed. Okay? We don't stay there for any longer than we do need. Okay. Then we talk about spine in line or leading with the head. So we make sure that our head, our shoulders, our hips and our knees and our toes go in the same direction. So I'm looking at you, Alice, because if I were to look at Lisa, I would actually get a bit of a twist, okay? So if I'm going to look at Lisa, I turn my whole body. Okay, so we lead with our head, lead the way. Then we use our legs to transfer our weight, okay? So even if I'm just coming down to the floor and I'm picking the bag of coal up or I'm picking the baby up, I'm still picking up using my quads and my glutes. And then we think, number 6, but not last but not least, communication. Communication is both verbal and non-verbal. If I was to say, don't sit down, Ian, what would you hear?
Stay still.
Well, you would. Somebody who has got limited perception might only hear sit down, sit or whatever. So it works better when you're standing up. So if you were stood up and I saw that you were about to fall and I would say, don't sit down, you would hear sit down. Okay?
Yeah.
Okay? So we need to use good, positive communication. And when we've done all of that, we always remember that we have to evaluate. Did it go well? If it did, then do it again. If it didn't go well, try not to repeat it. And if it did go well and you have found the secret how to move that patient, please ensure that you communicate that with the other staff on the ward, either in the notes or verbally, particularly to a nurse in charge or if there is a
there's a board behind the bed.
Can I just say, that's a very interesting fact. In the hospitals, there is a board behind the bed, and that is an aid memoir. It's a quick thing for you. It's not the real risk assessment. The real risk assessment is in the notes, and the staff on the wards will show you the risk assessment, and they'll show you the nice little checklist to see whether Mrs. Jones needs to be moved with 2 people with a Zimmer frame on a steady, but behind the wall is only an aide memoir. Okay, thank you. Right folks, hi. We're now going to talk about risk assessment, and everybody's going to raise their eyes and say we all know about risk assessment. I know that, but when something has gone wrong, at what stage has it usually gone wrong at? The beginning with risk assessment. As I said earlier, a risk assessment should be suitable and sufficient. One of the things that we get let down by is sufficiency. Okay, so I'm just going to give a quick run through. Everybody knows about how to do a risk assessment. You folks this morning coming here, how many risk assessments did you do? Loads and loads and loads. Make sure that you stopped at that red light, you stopped at the line, okay, and you pulled out for that cyclist or the guy on the tricycle that I had to go past. Okay, we're talking about an ergonomic approach to risk assessment. Ergonomics is looking at the whole thing, okay, bit holistic. So, risk assessment according to the health and safety guidelines is a 5-stage process. And the first stage we always have is identify your hazard. Now, a hazard is something with the potential to harm, okay? So those lovely cars out there in the car park, they are a potential to harm. Now, the next stage is we have to decide on the level of risk. Go back to those lovely cars, they're parked on the road, they're parked in the car park. What level of risk are they? High, medium or low? Low. Okay, put me behind the driving wheel. I haven't put the engine on yet, thank you very much, Alice. It's still only medium, but somebody could bump into me from behind, couldn't they? Put me on the road, then you have got a high. Thank you. So to keep us all safe, if we've decided that the level of risk is high, medium or low, then we have to put control measures in. And believe it or not, the first control measure is do a risk assessment. That's the first thing. I've just realised there's something I've forgotten to write down as well. Communication and documentation. Okay, so then you do your risk assessment and then you plan and prepare. As I said earlier, gather your things. Make sure that you know the hoist is working and the battery's working. Please do not forget our policies and procedures, which you can all find and download. So policies and procedures are actually a control measure as well. Then let's not forget equipment, good old equipment. Do we know how to use this equipment? Has it been serviced? Or can people teach us how to use that equipment? Even a simple tray to carry things is a piece of equipment. It's not just your big thing. Then we have a team, increase our team. And in a lot of moving and handling, we would say, particularly in the hospitals, that the minimum of people we are working with is 2. Then don't forget time. That is your best barrier. Time is very often the best barrier. We know at the moment about barriers, and time and allowing space is a very good barrier. But moving and handling, we need to think about that. Then we have the design of an area, which sadly is not always the best, but we do have to think about the design and how we can manipulate that design, maybe on a ward or in people's homes. Then we have to thing not to forget, which I did, was training, having a little bit of training. And then the other thing about it is when we've decided what we're doing, we must document it. So we need to document it, and that is another form of communication. So communication is all the time. It's our verbal, it's our non-verbal, it's our written as well. Have I remembered everything now, Lisa? Have I?
Yeah, just make sure the equipment's suitable for the load as well and it's in a safe working load.
Yeah, okay, so we make sure that it's suitable and sufficient again. When we've decided all those, we record. Should be available to everybody, either in a patient's notes or a policy and procedure. But when we record something, it then becomes a legal document in somebody's notes. It should be accurate, it should be legible, it should be concise, and it should be up to date. And that's where reviewing the risk assessment comes in. We review when necessary. It's very difficult to say. There are some people in ITU that are going to be reviewed every 5 minutes, every 10 minutes. It may be on another ward. It could be every other day. If you've left it a week in a hospital, I am concerned, because we do need to have things reviewed a little bit more. So that's the process. ID the hazards, think about your level of risk, put your control measures in, record them, and then review them. I'm just going to jump back to identifying the hazards, the good old light approach. Standing for the load, think about the hazards to do with the load, whether it's a sack of potatoes or a person, what's the weight like, what's the cooperation like. You know all these things, I don't have to go into them. The second, what about the hazards or the risks to the individual? We still have to think about the differences between men and women. We know that men have at least 1/3 greater strength than ladies do. That is a biological fact. I can't help that. We have to think about the clothing we're wearing, and especially our shoes. So we need to make sure that we do have the appropriate clothing as the individual. One of the most important things about the individual is the attitude that we come with. If we're positive, then, as we all know, that's going to be a lot better. And then we think about the task that we're going to be doing. Is it somebody on the floor? Is it helping somebody from the toilet? What are the things about the task? And then last but not least, the environment. So when we are looking for the hazards, I know a lot of people jump immediately to the hazards in the environment, but it's part of the whole nature. It's holistic. Okay, Lisa, fine, thank you. How long?